They lit candles and sang like family, then slid a folder across the table asking me to sign away $15 million. Name's Elliot, 47, consultant. The green apple gin burned colder than I remembered. Ever had your own birthday smell like strategy? I'm still deciding what shocked them more, the projector or grandma's voice. What would you have done in my shoes? They gave me a birthday cake. I gave them silence. We both knew this wasn't about candles. It started with a text from my mother. Just dinner, something small. Bring that smile Grandma loved. That line, the smile Grandma loved, felt rehearsed, like a quote she dusted off from an old family album caption. Still, I stared at the screen a moment longer than I should have, letting the dry autumn air from my half-cracked window hit the side of my face as I finished cold noodles straight from the container. The truth was, I hadn't smiled like Grandma remembered in a long time. I sat back in the chair, the wood frame creaking beneath me. My apartment was quiet, always was. White walls, a dark walnut bookshelf, a single framed photograph of Mount Hood in the winter. No clutter, no mess. A minimalist's way of saying, "No one else lives here?" A glass of water sweated quietly beside me. No coaster. Grandma Louise used to laugh when I forgot one. $15 million. That's how much she left me. It wasn't a rumor. It wasn't a split amongst the grandchildren sort of inheritance. It was mine. Full. Singular. She changed the trust a year before she passed, removed my brother Caleb, removed his wife, Nina, and silently, my mother too. There had never been a dramatic showdown, no final Thanksgiving revelation, just a notarized envelope, my name in cursive across the front, and a simple message written in her near-perfect print. If they ever make it about money, remember what I left isn't just money. I'd read that line more than once over the last year. It was now framed above my desk, between a stack of research reports I still consulted on freelance, and a half-dead succulent I hadn't watered in weeks. My phone buzzed again. A follow-up from Mom. "We thought it'd be nice to celebrate you. It's been too long, honey." Too long? Or just long enough for them to forget I was the one Grandma chose? I stood and crossed to the kitchen. The air smelled faintly of last week's coffee. The same wine bottle sat on the counter. I'd meant to open it the night the estate lawyer confirmed everything. But the cork remained sealed, almost like a monument to restraint, or doubt. They hadn't spoken to me much after the funeral. A few dry check-ins. No warmth, no conflict. Just an eerie silence that filled the space between us like packing peanuts, light, useless, and meant to protect something more fragile underneath. But this text? This invite? It didn't smell like forgiveness. It smelled like curiosity, or calculation. I pulled the small black folder from the bottom drawer of my desk. Original trust documents, signatures, dates, even the notarized transcript of Grandma Louise's last addendum. All legal, all final. I hadn't shown it to them. Not even hinted. Maybe tonight I'd keep it tucked in my coat. Not to flaunt, just to be ready. You don't enter a battlefield without armor, even if the invitation called it dinner. In the mirror above the console table, I adjusted my collar. The reflection caught me off guard. I looked older than I remembered. Maybe it was the light. Maybe it was the weight of a year of quiet wealth, of carrying $15 million in silence, knowing it changed everything, especially how they looked at me or didn't. The smile didn't come. I grabbed the wine, still unopened, still the same bottle. Grandma had loved the label. Deep green glass with a gold crest. "Elegant but honest," she once said. I held it for a moment longer, thinking about whether I'd even pour a glass tonight, whether they'd expect me to toast, to pretend. I slipped it into the canvas bag beside the folder. Keys, wallet, proof. Before locking the door, I glanced one last time at the framed letter from her. The last line stared back at me with a kind of daring grace. If they ever make it about money. I reached for the switch, but paused. The room behind me, orderly, silent, unbothered, almost whispered, "You don't have to go." But I did. Not for the cake, not even for the candles, for the truth. And maybe, just maybe, to see if my smile still fit their script. They called it a birthday dinner. But every fork clink felt like a countdown. By the time I pulled into the gravel driveway of the old summer house in Lake Oswego, the sky had bruised into that soft blue-gray that always made me feel like I was arriving too late for something I didn't ask to attend. It had been years since I'd been here. The house looked the same. Too much like an ad for cozy family retreats. Candles in mason jars lined the porch. Plaid throws were draped with suspicious precision over the wicker chairs. A wooden sign that read, "Fall is proof that change is beautiful," hung on the door. I resisted the urge to laugh. Inside, warmth and cinnamon and something citrusy hung in the air. Apple pie, maybe. The soundtrack of polite chatter played underneath it all. I stepped in. No one turned. They were already seated. I was the last act. "Elliot!" Mom's voice cut the air like a string snapping. She stood too fast and hugged me too long. "You look just like your father did at this age." I didn't ask which part she meant, balding or distant. A chorus of greetings followed. Caleb smiled too much. Nina waved like we were on different shores. The rest were cousins and in-laws, half-remembered names with perfect teeth and linen shirts. At my seat, my designated seat, sat a glass of green apple gin. Neatly poured. I hadn't touched that drink since I was 29, and naive enough to think it made me look refined. "For old times," Mom said, nudging the glass, "you used to love it." I nodded and took a small sip. Still tasted like candy mixed with furniture polish. The dinner was scripted. A parade of fall dishes, clinking silverware, too loud laughter. Caleb told a story about breaking Grandma's china as a kid, one he always repeated when he needed to remind everyone he used to be charming. Nina added a detail that never happened. They handed me a slice of apple pie with a single candle on it. Everyone clapped. I smiled. On cue. As I lifted the fork, I remembered my 35th birthday, how they asked me to co-sign Caleb's second mortgage between dessert and coffee. I said no back then. The silence that followed had stretched nearly 2 years. Tonight they didn't wait that long. After pie, Mom cleared her throat. "We actually have a little something for you." She glanced at Caleb, who nodded and pulled a navy folder from beneath his chair. Gold letters on the front read, "Vance Family Optimization Proposal." I blinked. Caleb slid it to me with a grin. "We've all been thinking. This inheritance, it's a lot to manage alone. We thought maybe it'd be smart to consolidate. You don't even have to handle anything, just sign, and we'll take care of the logistics." He used the word "we" like it came pre-approved. Nina chimed in, her voice syrupy. "It's just cleaner this way, easier for everyone. We even had someone review it for you, totally above board." I opened the folder. The air thickened. Pages of legal jargon, trust mechanics, asset flow charts. Somewhere around the 3rd page, my eyes caught the real purpose. A clause buried neatly in the 2nd paragraph of the 3rd section. A transfer of authority. If I signed, I would no longer have sole control of the trust. Caleb watched me read, his face a practiced blend of concern and confidence. Nina sipped her wine like it held the answer to a question no one had asked. Mom smiled with an innocence that made me wonder if she understood what was really in the folder. I folded my napkin. neatly, into thirds. A habit I hadn't outgrown. One I picked up when Grandma started teaching me to control my face when everything underneath it felt off. The room pulsed with unspoken hope, or pressure. I held up the folder like I might toast with it, then set it down gently. Took another sip of the gin I hated. "Mind if I sleep on it?" I asked. The phrase landed like a gavel, not quite a number, but not the yes they were expecting. Nina's fingers tightened on her wine glass. Caleb blinked too slowly. Mom started gathering plates that didn't need gathering. In that moment, I could almost hear Grandma's voice behind me. If they ever make it about money, I wasn't angry. I wasn't even surprised. This wasn't about me. It never had been. But now, I knew exactly how far they were willing to go. I didn't leave angry. I left awake. The rain had already started by the time I made it home. A steady, careful tapping against the wide windows of my condo, as if the sky itself was hesitant to be loud tonight. I tossed my coat over the back of the couch, kicked off my shoes, and set the folder down on the kitchen island. The same folder Caleb had slid toward me like it was just another party favor. From across the room, the dark screen of my TV caught my reflection. I looked calm. I almost believed it. I walked over to my bookshelf and pulled out a smaller envelope, hidden behind a row of old finance journals. Cream-colored, thick, sealed. On the front, in Grandma's deliberate cursive, it read, "Only if they ask you to sign." She had given it to me nearly 10 months ago, handed it over during one of our last lunches at the retirement condo in Bend. No ceremony, no riddles. Just, "You'll know if the moment ever comes." I hadn't opened it. Not until now. The flap came apart slowly, like it had been waiting to exhale. Inside were two things: a handwritten letter and a smaller envelope with my name again, this time underlined twice. The letter was brief, just a few sentences. "Some truths don't come out loud, Elliot. They unfold. If they try to corner you, don't waste your words. Give this to Jared Wexler. He'll handle it." Jared Wexler, her estate attorney, the one who looked like he belonged on a postage stamp. Gray suit, pocket square, voice like dry paper. I turned the smaller envelope in my hand for a moment before tucking both pieces back into the folder. Then, as if summoned, my phone lit up. Noah. My friend from graduate school, a fellow quiet type. I answered. "Hey." "How was the dinner?" he asked. I could hear the rain through his end, too. Must have been city-wide. "Scripted, suspiciously cordial. They had a folder ready." "The kind with cake, or clauses?" "The kind that pretends to simplify things while stripping ownership." He didn't respond for a second. Then, "You gonna let them?" "No," I said, almost surprised by the clarity in my own voice. "But I'm going to let them think I might. Until Friday." "Friday?" "You'll see." The next morning I drove downtown and walked into Jared Wexler's office. Same bookshelves, same scent of lemon polish and old money. He didn't say anything when he saw me, just nodded, stood, and walked to the filing cabinet. "Your grandmother anticipated this," he said. "She left something with us. Digital, mostly, but with teeth." He handed me a USB in a small velvet pouch, like it was jewelry. "There's a video. She recorded it 2 weeks before she passed. Also, a protective clause built into the trust. Hidden, but enforceable." "What kind of clause?" "If coercion is attempted, or any undue pressure proven," he said, tapping the desk. 50% of the trust is legally rerouted to a set of charities of her choosing, without your consent." I blinked. "So if they push too hard, they lose what they were after." I left the office without saying much more. The USB felt warm in my pocket, like it carried something alive. That evening, back home, I dimmed the lights and let a low jazz playlist hum from the speakers. The rain hadn't let up. I moved deliberately, as if each step needed its own soundtrack. I plugged the USB in. The file name was simple. For Elliot. Only. The screen lit up, and then there she was. Grandma Louise, in her favorite navy cardigan, her hair still neat, her gaze direct. Behind her, a wall of books and a painting of the Oregon coast. She didn't smile. "If you're watching this," she said, "they've made it about money." She listed names: Caleb, Nina, Miranda, even the cousins. I loved them all, but I knew who would listen and who would wait for their slice. "I didn't leave you $15 million to buy silence. I left it because you were the only one who never asked." She paused. "If they're watching this with you, I was right." The screen went black. I didn't cry. I didn't even move for a while. Eventually I stood, walked over to the hallway closet, and began pulling out the folding chairs. 1, 2, 7 total. Just enough. I rearranged the living room, pushed the couch back, rolled up the rug, and aimed the small projector at the blank white wall I usually left undecorated. Then I opened my phone and typed, "This Friday, my place, 7 p.m. I'd like to say thank you properly." Send. I didn't add a smiley face. I didn't say, "Hope you can make it." The message wasn't a request. It was a prelude. The script was about to flip. And this time, I would be the one with the folder. They walked in expecting wine and forgiveness. I handed them a remote control and silence. The apartment smelled faintly of cedar wood and lemon oil. I'd lit 2 discreet candles and cracked the windows just enough to let in the Portland evening. Rain had held off for now, but the sky hung like a held breath. The chairs were already lined up. 7 of them. Neutral-colored, padded, evenly spaced like an informal tribunal. At the front, the white wall glowed faintly with the standby light from the projector. On the kitchen counter, 1 unopened bottle of Chardonnay, 3 glasses, and the remote control. Noah arrived first. He nodded at the arrangement but didn't say anything, just slipped into the far-right chair with his hands folded. That was always his way. A spectator with insight. At 6:58, the buzzer rang. Then again. Then again. I let them in. Miranda was first through the door. She hugged me longer than usual, a cloying embrace that reminded me of honey poured over something already spoiled. "Hi, sweetheart," she said, with that upward lilt she reserved for holiday greetings and home inspections. Caleb followed, in a leather jacket too new to be his, too tight in the shoulders. He glanced around the apartment as if he were there to appraise it. Nina came in last, cradling a bottle of wine like a peace offering she didn't believe in. "I didn't know what you liked now," she said. So I guessed. "You guessed," I repeated softly. Once everyone had settled, I stood at the front of the room. "Thank you all for coming," I began, voice steady. "I thought we'd watch something together first, before we talk." There was a flicker in Miranda's eyes. The others exchanged quick looks. I didn't give them time to ask. I inserted the USB, clicked the projector remote. The screen brightened. Grandma Louise appeared, exactly as I'd remembered her in that video. Navy cardigan, posture upright, expression cutting through the screen like an old photograph that still stares back. "If you're watching this," she said, "then you've made it about money." The room went still. "Elliot is the sole beneficiary of my trust for a reason. I love all of you, but I observed all of you." She listed names, birthdays, anecdotes, her voice neither cold nor warm, just deliberate. "To protect this gift, I've included a clause. If any attempt is made to pressure or manipulate him into signing over control, 50% of the assets will automatically be redirected to the National Center for Elder Financial Abuse. Non-negotiable. She paused. If Elliot refuses to sign, that means I chose well. The screen faded to black. No one moved, not even to breathe loudly. Caleb was the first to break the silence. He shot up, eyes wide. "This is manipulation," he barked. "She's not here to clarify. This could have been edited. Anyone could have—" I stepped forward, calm. "There's more," I said. I pulled a folder from under the projector. Thick, tabbed. Inside, printouts, screenshots, timelines. I placed it on the coffee table and opened it. Text messages, email chains, even a few recorded voicemails, all documented, from Caleb, from Nina, from a cousin who wasn't invited tonight. I walked them through it, page by page. My voice stayed level. I didn't raise it once. "You said, 'He doesn't even know what to do with it,'" I read aloud from one printout. "And then, 'We'll just have him sign it after a toast.'" I turned to Nina. "Or yours. Let's do it at his place. If he refuses, it'll look weird." Her knuckles went white around the wine bottle, still unopened. I continued. "All time-stamped. The week before the dinner. 3 separate email threads titled Friday Plan. The contents speak for themselves." From the corner, Jared's face appeared on a muted Zoom window. He didn't say a word, but the image was enough. Legal presence. Witness to delivery. I looked at each of them, one by one. "I'm not angry," I said. "But I am awake, and an independent audit has already started. I just wanted you to see why." The room didn't explode. It imploded. Nobody stood, nobody left. They just sat, staring, but not at me. Not really. They were staring at the screen, or maybe what had been there, maybe what it revealed about them. The projector's soft fan was the only sound. That, and the faint drizzle finally tapping against the windows again, polite, like a guest who knew they were late. I turned off the screen. No one moved. Even the bottle of wine remained sealed, as if it knew it was too late to help. I didn't hear from them for 3 days. Then came a lawyer, not a phone call. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, hand-delivered by a man in a windbreaker who didn't take off his sunglasses, despite the November drizzle. He asked if I was Mr. Elliot Vance, confirmed it with a nod, then handed me the packet, and walked off without another word. I didn't open it right away. Instead, I let it sit beside my coffee, untouched, while I waited for Noah and Jared at our usual table by the window of Common Grounds, a quiet Portland cafe that played lo-fi jazz and oversteeped its tea. It was still early. Mist clung to the glass, like soft static. Noah arrived first. He slid into the seat across from me, clocked the envelope, and said nothing. That's what I appreciated about him. He didn't fill silence just because it was there. Jared followed 5 minutes later, trench coat dripping, briefcase tight in his grip. "You got served," he said, matter of fact, sitting down and pulling his laptop from the case. "Let's take a look." I handed him the envelope. He opened it like a surgeon, calm, methodical, detached. The complaint was thick with legalese, but the intention was clear. Contest the inheritance on the grounds of emotional manipulation. A line from the filing caught my eye. The decedent was of compromised emotional capacity and may have been unduly influenced in allocating assets. "Compromised?" I muttered. "She played Wordle in French up until 2 weeks before she passed." Jared didn't laugh. He flipped through the pages, brows furrowed in a way that signaled he wasn't surprised, just mildly annoyed. "We'll file a counter," he said, "and we'll attach these." He pulled out a smaller folder from his briefcase, slimmer but somehow heavier. Inside were signed statements from Louise. One from 2020, one from 2022, and another dated 6 months before her death. All notarized, all outlining previous attempts by Miranda and Caleb to access trust funds. One even included an email where Miranda referred to the inheritance as correctable through pressure. She anticipated this, Jared said simply. Of course she did. That afternoon, we drafted the counterclaim. Jared's team would argue that any escalation would trigger escrow lockdowns on all family-linked accounts. Caleb's home mortgage, underwritten by the estate. Nina's business loan? Same. Even Miranda's joint retirement annuity, structured with oversight from the trust. If they want to go to war, Jared said, they're going to pay for the battlefield. I sat with that for a moment. It wasn't satisfaction I felt. Not anger, either. Just a quiet affirmation. Like hearing a door finally click shut after years of wind rattling it on its hinges. That evening, as I poured myself a glass of the bourbon Grandma Louise had given me the year I turned 30, unopened until now, my phone buzzed. It was an email from Miranda. We could have shared it. You didn't have to do this. I stared at the sentence longer than I should have, not because I believed it, but because it was so cleanly cut from the cloth of her usual guilt weaving. Then I opened a new message, typed one line. You already did. No signature, no greeting. Just that. I hit send. And for a long time I sat there, watching the light blink on my router. A tiny signal that something had left, something had landed. Later that night, I noticed a voicemail from Caleb. I didn't listen. Didn't even check the transcript preview. I tapped delete, not as a statement, not as revenge, just as closure. Some words don't deserve space, and some silences are full sentences. I didn't keep the money. I kept the lesson. It's a strange thing, walking into a building with your grandmother's name etched into the front window. Not as a memorial, but as a beginning. The Louise Vance Foundation sits above a second-hand bookstore on East Burnside. No brass plaques, no velvet ropes. Just a glass door with hours written in dry erase and the smell of old paper drifting up the stairwell. We opened in March, but it wasn't until May that I realized what we'd built. The office is small, functional. 3 rooms, one for consultations, one for workshops, one for admin. Noah runs logistics, filing, scheduling, making the printer behave. He says it's his version of jazz, controlled improvisation. I mostly listen. People come in with stories that sound nothing like mine, and yet somehow exactly like mine. A retired mechanic whose son siphoned his pension. A teacher whose sister took out credit cards in her name. A young mother, 23, with a baby on her hip, trying to escape a household where love meant financial dependency. She reminded me of Grandma, in a way, not in age or tone, but in clarity. The way she said, I just want to learn how to not need permission to protect myself. We helped her file a grant. She starts community college in the fall. General studies, maybe nursing. Anything that makes me feel real again, she said. Sometimes that's all healing is. Choosing something that makes you feel real again. We've started conversations with state representatives too. There's growing momentum to recognize intrafamilial financial abuse as its own legal category. Jared connected us with a lobbyist who lost a cousin to elder theft. She's got fire. I provide the paper trail. We make a good team. One quiet Tuesday, a letter arrived. Handwritten. No return address. Elliot, I'm sorry, I'm trying to understand. Can I help? Caleb, I didn't cry. I didn't reply either. Some bridges don't need burning. They just need boundaries. That weekend, I walked past the old house. The one with the wraparound porch and the mailbox that never closed right. I stood across the street for a minute, not to grieve or reminisce, just to acknowledge that it was no longer mine to circle. Then I kept walking. I turned off my phone before heading into the seminar. About 20 people were seated already. The topic: identifying financial red flags in family settings. Not exactly a TED Talk title, but the room was full. I took a breath, stepped up, and started with the line I wish someone had spoken to me when I was 37. Here's what I wish someone had told me 10 years ago. Saying no to people you love isn't a betrayal. It's the beginning of trust, with yourself. Some heads nodded. A few looked away. One man scribbled it down on a napkin. Later that night, I stayed behind to clean up. The office was quiet. The city soft. You'd never guess it was the same world where inheritance turned into war. I opened the drawer beside my desk and pulled out the letter. The one Louise left me, not the legal one, the personal one. Ink slightly smudged, folded 3 times, her handwriting slanted and patient. One line was underlined twice. Choosing yourself is not betrayal. It's the first honest inheritance you'll ever receive. I read that line again, and this time, I believed it. I still remember the weight of Grandma's letter in my hand, heavier than the millions it protected. What I carried out of that house wasn't revenge. It was clarity. Sometimes family can lose their way, not out of cruelty, but fear. Fear of being left behind, of not having enough. But the real inheritance isn't money. It's knowing when to choose peace over permission, truth over silence. And maybe, just maybe, breaking the pattern is how healing begins. If this story touched something in you, a memory, a moment, a mirror, I'd love to hear what stayed with you.